Hey guys, Coach Nate here, talking about why every runner should squat, part 2. Today we are going to dig into the specifics of squatting, the different squat movements you should be doing from back squat to front squat to overhead, and why understanding those is so foundational for doing all the important single leg stuff you should be doing, which we'll be getting to as well. I got my barbell, so I am ready to go. Let's dig in. So we want to dive into the different types of squats that you can do that are really beneficial. And I'm going to get started with the overhead squat with the PVC pipe as a great way to open up your shoulders, open up your hips, and just really improve your overall mobility. It's a great warm up. I use this for my classes all the time. So I'm going to start with a nice wide grip on this thing, a lot wider than shoulder width stance. My hands can be way out here. And I may start with just a few shoulder passes. Now the goal is that I find a place where my shoulders aren't sticking. Sometimes if it's too close and you go up and you feel like you have to bend an elbow to get over or really arch your back, it's a little too narrow for you right now. So what you can do is go a little wider. And if you're someone who's really not brought your shoulders up overhead before, as a runner, we don't do that much. We live all down here, we live here. That's okay. Go thumb and forefinger in as wide as possible. That'll give you the most room. And if you can't go all the way back, don't sweat it. You're just practicing. And then from here, I'm gonna have this pipe overhead. There's no weight on this thing yet, so I'm just sensing where it is. And I'm just gonna squat down. I'm gonna do the same thing we learned in part 1, hips back, pushing those knees out, dropping down nice and low as we can, come up tall. Now the challenge with the overhead squat is, if I'm really stiff in the ankles, my upper body is going to be way hinged over down here just so I can stay balanced. This overhead squat forces more dorsiflexion in the ankle and forces me to more upright. So that's one of the reasons why I like it, because it asks more range of motion of myself. And the more I ask of my body, the more I'm going to get. So PVC pipe, warm up, do 10 to 20 shoulder passes, 10 to 20 overhead squats, just empty. Now, if I want to upgrade and I want to get a little bit more midline stability, shoulder stability, and just stability work in general, I'm going to upgrade to, say, a barbell or a little bit of weight. This is a standard 45-pound bar. There are a lot of times you could find one in a gym that might be 15 pounds or 25 pounds, something lighter. So find the one that works for you. I'm going to get this on my back, step out, nice wide grip. I'm going to either press or just do a little dip drive and push press this up. Now, already I'm having to stabilize a little bit harder here. My belly's got to be super tight, my butt's got to be tight, and I got to be nice and active with my shoulders. Now from here, it's going to be the same thing. I'm going to pull those hips back, but I can't pull them back as far because I have this weight. I have to sink down straight and not hinge too much. So I'm gonna have to push my knees out a lot more. Does that make sense? So if I'm back squatting, which we'll get to a little bit more, I could hinge a lot more and be hinged over. With this, when I have this bar, I have to sink straight down to keep this barbell over my shoulders, hips, knees, and ankles so it's nice and straight. And then I can start to practice these a little bit. If I'm a little stiff, I'm gonna tend to wanna pull actively this bar back behind me a little bit as I squat down because it's gonna wanna go forward. Worst things worse, you start to lose it, you just pull that bar down, no big deal. So PVC pipe, great way to practice, upgrade, get a little bit more stability and strength. With a barbell, you can add a little bit of weight as you go from there. Overhead squats at least one time a week is a great way to go. So next we're going to talk about our back squat. Now a back squat is the simplest, most straightforward squat next to the squatting with no weight at all. We get that bar on our shoulders. It is a fantastic tool for really developing strength, that force production, that power output that we need as runners. And it's also great for learning. Requires the least amount of mobility, or extra mobility, should I say, in this movement. So I have my squat rack set up here, and this is, usually just about shoulder width, or not shoulder, just like 1 or 2 fingers below my shoulders, so it's easy to get on and off. But again, I don't have to. I could just pull a barbell off the ground. Whatever I have access to is going to work. I'm going to step under this. I'm already in my squat position. Abs are on tight. I'm going to stand up, step, and now I'm in my squat. So I'm just going to turn a little bit to the side just so you can see. Just like we've done for squatting, this bar's on my ground, or this bar's on my shoulders. Elbows are gonna be pulled in a little bit, because that just anchors and locks my shoulders, which is gonna be helpful, especially when this weight gets heavier. Pushing those hips back, pushing those knees out. Notice I'm just saying the same thing, and I can squat. Now, unlike the overhead squat, I can be a little bit more hinged over on this one. That's okay. I like this because the more I hinge over, the more I bias the rear wheel drive, the hips, the hamstrings, the glutes. Still pushing those knees out, still not letting my feet collapse in, my knees collapse in. If they do, I'm going to modify my depth. That's my back squat right there. This will be the heaviest squat you'll be able to do, so you can start to load up, working on, 3 sets of 8 to start, working to 4 sets of 6, 5 sets of 5, 5 sets of 3 are great, brackets and places to start in terms of progressively building up your load. But if I do this, I get some back squatting in once a week, once every other week. That's a great way for developing that strength and that foundation. So on to our last squat, the front squat. I love this one because it's this great combination of the 2 previous ones we've done. It's still something that I could expose myself to heavier weights on, and I get that massive stimulus on that midline stability, but it also has higher mobility demands, and it's almost like a more athletic squat. A lot of times if you hear some trainer, it's like a corny trainer joke, if they could only bring one movement to an island, what would they bring? And it would be the front squat, because it's so all-inclusive and comprehensive. This bar, I'm going to just use my PVC pipe first, is going to sit up on what is my front rack. Now my hands aren't going to live here in the squat, but I just want you to see this as an example. I want to squat down nice and upright, just like I'm doing my overhead squat. My hands are going to be out here, so this bar lives up on my shoulders, not in my wrists. Now notice that if I lack that range in the ankle and I squat, or I lack that extension of the thoracic spine and I start to bend, I start to lose this weight. So I want to be upright, that bar's on the shoulders, and where my hands are going to be, just outside shoulders, the elbows are going to live right up here. I'm going to squat on down, find that balance, come up tall, hips back, knees out, and just showing you from the side, same thing. Trying to be very upright here with this movement. I love this because this adds that little bit of external rotation to the shoulder, which is just good shoulder function, helpful for that arm swing. Now, I'm going to do this with the barbell. Hands can be just outside shoulder width or so, is a good place to start. Elbows up high. Now notice that I'm getting this bar on my shoulders before I lift it. I'm not doing this. This is a no-no, to lift with your hands and then go up, because it's never going to get comfortable. I want this in the rack. Oopsie-daisy, got a little hit on the microphone there. I'm going to lift my elbows up nice and high, get this on my shoulders, I step back, and then I hit my squats. Hips back just a little bit, knees out a lot, elbows up nice and high all the way through. And as I said, I can still go kind of heavy on this. Big demands on the torso and the midline, bigger demands on that range of motion, and just a different lift. So again, I would cycle back and forth between my back squat and my front squat. Here's my major strength piece. You might want to start with your back squat, go through a few cycles, and then advance to this, and then go back to the back squat back and forth, so you can start to play with that in your tool set. But if I have all these squat portions in there, it really starts to broaden my athletic skill set, which in turn makes me a more dangerous runner. So now let's talk about the more sport-specific stuff. Some of my favorite offshoots of the squat that we just did is our lunge, our step up, and our single leg squat. Now I'm gonna lump them together this way because once I've understood and mastered the foundation of squatting, that hip back, that knee out for external rotation so I can load up my hips, that strong, stable spine where everything's engaged, all these other movements start to make more sense because the rules are the same. But if I don't have my foundation and I go to right this stuff, things go off the rails pretty quick. And it's not to say that I do them wrong, I just don't really get a lot out of them. So I want to start just with the lunge. That's going to be the simplest one. We squatted this way, really biasing our hip back to load up here. So when I lunge, it's going to be the same thing. I'm going to step forward with this lunge. But again, just like my squatting, I don't want my knees to go forward. So when I lunge, I'm not going to let my knee go forward at all. Some people say, hey, knee over toe, that's fine. But to me, that's not a very meaningful cue. What I'd rather see is you pulling your hip back so your shin is nice and vertical, dropping down. Because when I pull my hip back, notice what that does. It's like me hinging more at the hip. It's loading up this whole system, so I've got a better lunge right there. I wanna make sure that when I do lunge, I'm driving this back hip forward, so this knee goes out a little bit. So again, I've got a little bit of external rotation happening in this front leg, just like I'm doing, boom, in my squat. Same thing with the step up. When I have this leg up here, again, knee over toe, letting myself rock forward or big push off here, not very valuable for getting a lot out of this in terms of impacting my running. I want to slide my hip back. Notice the same theme here. How can I minimize the push off of this back leg? Shift my weight in the front leg. Right now I'm not loaded with anything, so I can reach forward with my upper body to balance and lead with my hips, stand up tall, right? I can even drive this leg up tall just for a little extra balance. Come down nice and smooth, here, up tall. The thing I want to minimize or avoid is my knee collapsing like this, because if my knee does that, it's just like when I squat like this, no good at all. So that's going to be my little step up right there. And then finally, even just a single leg squat. The single leg squat is where I see my sequencing errors the most. And what I say by sequencing errors, going back to that first video we did, not letting my knees bend first at all, really letting my hips push back. So when I'm here, if my knee just drops down, I'm not really getting any engagement back here in the hamstrings or glutes. It's all in the knee, no good. How can I shoot those hips back just a little bit? So all of a sudden I'm a little bit more stable. And then I'm not going through any crazy range of motion here, but again, I'm trying to respect the rules. Can my foot be super stable? My ankle, my knee, and my hip be really stable? So when I drop down, everything's nice and aligned. Notice if I lose that, my knee goes in, everything starts to collapse. It's okay to be on the edge there, but that's where you're fighting. I can add these in 2 days a week, some variation of these things. You can do a little bit more higher volume here. 3 sets of 8 to 12 is a good place to target. Doesn't have to be weight, but you can load it up as well. And this is a great way to practice that stability and that balance and get all those nook and cranny muscles, which is I like to call them, to develop and help with everything else. But remember, this is not a replacement for my heavy squats in the same way that my heavy squats aren't a replacement for them. Neither of them are gonna get me to the finish line of the marathon. I gotta do all the running for that. But this builds the body that can handle the training that can then execute on the mileage. Remember guys, if you are all jazzed up now on front squats, overhead squats, back squats, and you want it in your program, well now you have this great opportunity because we've built a running strength program that's 8 weeks long, 2 times a week, fits in with everything, and you could try it 1 week for free today, right now, just by clicking the link in the description to sign up for the training club. Of course, if you like this video, hit that thumbs up for us. That always helps us out. Drop any comments or questions down below. We are here to have a conversation with you. We love that. And then of course, subscribe to our channel, guys. We got new videos coming out each and every single week. We want you to be in the know. And I'm gonna keep filming these things so you can keep watching. So I'll catch you in the next video.